My name is Sam Teicher. I'm the co-founder and chief reef officer of Coral Vita, and we're a mission-driven company that grows corals to restore dying reefs. Conservatively, reefs generate $30 billion a year through tourism and fisheries and coastal protection, while sustaining a quarter of all marine life and the livelihoods of up to 1 billion people around the world. Unfortunately, over half of the world's reefs are already dead, and we're on track to lose more than 90% of reefs by 2050. So this is not just an ecological tragedy, but a socioeconomic catastrophe. And that's where Coral Vita comes in. So we work with leading scientists and advisors using breakthrough methods to grow corals up to 50 times faster, while strengthening their resilience to threats like warming and acidifying oceans. And then using a commercial land-based farming model, we're working to unlock funding to support ecosystem scale restoration, starting here in the Bahamas, but eventually looking to work all around the world in every country and territory that have coral reefs. My love for the environment has been with me since I was a kid. I remember rolling over logs in my parents' backyard and spending hours playing with bugs, which was not something my mom was thrilled about, but I really enjoyed. And as soon as I was old enough, I got scuba certification. And the first time I saw a coral reef was in Jamaica and just fell in love immediately. I mean, for me, it was like getting to visit an alien planet, almost floating in zero gravity like an astronaut, only it was 50 yards off the shore. So this has been something that has mattered to me and that I've loved ever since I was a child. Based on things I was studying together with my own passions and my brother's experience after college working on climate action, I started thinking about that as a field of study. And I actually majored in political science, but I chose to sort of focus in within political science on sustainability and on climate change. And really one of the key tipping points for me was a class I was taking called Global Environmental History. And one class was talking about a settlement, Tel Leilan, in ancient Syria. And this was thousands of years ago, and the settlers were faced with a multi-year drought. And they had a series of choices. They could move to an area where they could sustain themselves, they could adapt to the new conditions, or they could suffer the consequences. And they stayed put, and they failed to adapt, and the settlement eventually collapsed. And for me, that was sort of, this epiphany moment that we have one planet, we've got one home, and so we have the choice to adapt and innovate to fix things or suffer the consequences. I met my co-founder, Gator, which is truly his name, while I was getting my master's degree at the Yale School of the Environment. So Gator was my classmate getting the same degree, and we became friends. And then through our friendship, we're sort of thinking about big environmental challenges that weren't getting solved at the pace or the scale needed to really make a difference. And we were really frustrated by that. I mean, we loved those spaces, but really wanted to see change happen in a effective, rapid, and positive manner. And we thought, well, if we take a step back from those spaces, maybe there's a business solution. And that led us to the idea for Coral Vita as a mission-driven business to help scale restoration to keep reefs alive for the future. So our very first step was sitting on our back porch, hanging out, sharing ideas with one another about things that matter to us and maybe that a business could solve. And so we batted around actually a number of different ideas, everything from a new system for improving irrigation for agriculture to a sort of compendium for assessing the true environmental and social cost of products that you buy in a store, to then coral reef restoration. And I, while in Mauritius, getting to do restoration, saw how reefs can be brought back to life and sort of started rolling from there until the idea coalesced more. We went through a number of different iterations and eventually then got a $1,000 grant from the university from their entrepreneurial program. So really all of Coral Vita's legacy, it started off with no money, but $1,000 was enough to get us going. And that let us fly down to the Florida Keys to meet with who eventually became our first advisor, Dr. David Vaughn. He pioneered our sort of the methods we use, microfragmenting, to accelerate coral growth rates. It all sort of rolled from there. But as is the case with really any idea, whether it's in business or otherwise, there's going to be a lot of unexpected twists and turns and roadblocks and things thrown in your face. And we had to navigate through many of those and more. Myself and Gator and our first employee moved down here in March 2018. Took the next few months to sort of get established, get all the licenses and permits that we needed, began construction on the first farm in November of 2018. And by May 2019, had opened up the farm, the world's first land-based commercial coral farm for reef restoration here in Freeport, Grand Bahama. We had an amazing first summer of success at our farm. And then the strongest storm to ever hit the Bahamas arrived, and it crushed the neighboring island of Abaco as well as here in Grand Bahama. And obviously the devastation was and remains to be incredibly difficult for the Bahamian people. Whole communities were wiped out, billions of dollars in losses, lives gone. And that obviously I think is what matters the most. Our coral farm was also wiped out. Some of the tanks that we grew the corals in washed ashore 35 miles away. And so all the work we had put in over those past few months and the years prior were completely upended. And what we had actually decided to do with our investors and our board was look at the successes that we had had in spite of how horrific and difficult things had been. Rather than just rebuilding the pilot and holding on with the money we had actually achieved a lot of our goals. And so we actually set out to raise a new investment round of $2 million to transform the pilot into a state-of-the-art facility, which would then position us in a couple years to start launching farms all around the world. And I'm actually really excited to share that we raised that $2 million round and we are nearing completion. My biggest achievement so far with Coral Vita is launching our farm with Gator, my co-founder, with our team, growing that team. We have more than 10 full-time staff now, together with interns and volunteers, and more than half the staff are Bahamian, and have the farm not only rebuilt after Hurricane Dorian, but expanding and growing. And I hope showcasing that we can create for-profit, for good companies to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges.